Shane McKenna here, and today we're going to be talking about growing microgreens and specifically harvesting your microgreens. Now this is a tray that I started harvesting the microgreens on day 6. In this section of the tray is salad greens, and they were going gangbusters, so I just started harvesting. Plus I noticed a couple of issues that comes up, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But first let me just say, this is miniature farming. You are creating a condition that wouldn't happen in nature. There's no way in nature that all of these seeds would be concentrated into such a small area and growing all simultaneously, starting all at the same time. Our process is helping you to force that and to create this abundance that is in this microgreen tray. So let's talk a little bit about this micro farming world and some of the things that come up, some of the trade-offs, some of the reasons why we're doing the things we're doing, and then we'll get to harvesting. So first of all, why soil? Most commercial microgreen growers are growing in a pad hydroponically, and they're using water primarily. They're not using any nutrients, very rarely, and they are depending on the nutrient that's already available in that seed. They start it, they have a very refined process, and when those microgreens are mature and ready to harvest, they harvest the entire tray at once. Because we're growing them at home, we're not going to harvest the entire tray at once. I mean, you could, but for me personally, I'm going to harvest off of this tray for a week. So far, I've harvested 2 days worth, a couple of cups. And so a tray will last me from a week to 10 days. I have harvested off of trays for up to a month, and maybe even a little beyond. I wasn't really tracking it, but I know that some of the trays that I've had, I've been harvesting off of them for about a month or more. And the taste and texture profile changes during that time. So part of it is what you prefer. Part of it is when you get to them. And so we're going to talk about some of those things. Now, another reason that I started harvesting this, and you'll notice this area right here has all the greens out. I harvested this area first because I noticed there was a problem. The greens here were more stunted than the rest. They were a little bit more spindly. And if I can get my camera down in here, we'll show you why. If I can part that. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little bit of mold down in here. So one of the trade-offs of using natural soil is, while we get all of the great nutrients, in addition to the nutrient in the seed, we get all those great nutrients out of soil. We have a lot of biomass in our soil, and if there's a spot that is a little bit too damp, it can create mold. And we try to mitigate that. If you've seen our first video, our introduction video, then you know we have some things that help us mitigate that, but nothing's 100% foolproof. This is nature. And so all of the things that you experience in nature, you're going to experience here. And I hope to point some of those out to you. Let me look for something here. It'll be off camera, I think. Oh, here we go. I'm going to just, oh, shoot, it fell off. Okay. Well, what I had is I had picked a microgreen. Let's see if you can see that. I'd picked a microgreen, and the seed husk was still on this microgreen. Now I've already gone through and picked those microgreens that I found so far with the seed husk still on the top, because what'll happen is sometimes that seed husk, the leaves get stuck in it and they can't get out, and that microgreen will die. And so those were mostly microgreens that I picked and discarded. But anyway, I'm not going to discard this one. This one's fine. I'm just going to pull the roots off, and I'm just going to put my root, what I pull off the root, over there in that corner. And then I'm just going to put my microgreens in this bowl as I harvest them. So, but you'll find sometimes there's a seed pod stuck to the end of the microgreen. I found another one here. Let me see if I can pick it without it falling off. Okay, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but you see how that's got a black speck on it? See if we can get this a little better. That's actually the seed pod that the top of the microgreen plant is stuck inside of, and that's going to kill this plant, probably. In nature, this would be a plant that wouldn't make it. And so there I just pulled it off, but you can see that because I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of hard to see, but the leaves are kind of deformed because they couldn't grow properly inside that. Anyway, this would be a microgreen that wouldn't make it long term, or a plant in nature that wouldn't make it long term. I'm going to use it. It's going to be fine. But some of these areas where I've got some mold issues, I'm going to go ahead and clear those out so that they get airflow, and I'm not going to add any water to that area so that that mold doesn't spread. And these microgreens, I'm not going to save these. I've got a, off camera, I've got a trash that I'm throwing those into. And this is going to happen. Hopefully it won't happen too much. And if you get too much water in your system, if you water it too much, you're going to have mold issues. Fortunately for this, there was only a couple of small spots, actually more than what I'm used to, that have some mold in them. So it's not a big deal. I'm losing maybe a 3/4 of a cup of microgreens out of this tray because of these spots that have some mold in them. So if you're getting mold, it's because that area had too much moisture. And also, let me address, our soil has lots of biomass in it. And the reason for that is that it helps to hold that moisture so that you're not babysitting it. The trade-off would be to grow these hydroponically, and then multiple times a day, you're making sure that they have water on them, and you're balancing those water issues. And so, in my opinion, if you're growing microgreens at home, it's better to grow them in soil so that you can let them go for a few days. I haven't put any water in this tray since the other day on day 6. It's day 8 now. And I prefer to have that convenience of I don't have to babysit this as much as if it were a hydroponic system. Plus, all the nutrients that are available in that soil are being taken up by the microgreens, and that's what we want. We want the flavor and nutrients that are available. Hello, this is Shane with Ascending Harvest, and today we're going to talk about watering your microgreens. So I'm actually going to move this a little bit because I got something I want to show you here. So I've been harvesting out of this tray. I've had 3 harvests out of it already, and so I've used maybe 60% of the tray, or I'm sorry, 40% of the tray. And these greens over here are different than these over here, so that's why they look different. These are salad greens on this side, and this is broccoli and bok choy over here. I think. Could be wrong. I didn't label this when I planted it, but if it's typically what I did, this is broccoli and bok choy. Anyway, when to water. So I'm checking this, and this soil is damp. If I check down in here in the microgreens, the soil is definitely damp. I don't need to water this, but I'm going to show you a few things anyway. Now over on this end, I've left a couple of the smaller greens when I harvested. They're going to grow up, and I'm going to just let those grow into baby lettuce. So I'll probably let those grow for like 3 weeks or so. So those are going to be lettuces that I can pick for a salad. You can see right here on the surface, you can see in the camera that the difference in the dark and the light of the soil. That's because this soil is a little bit drier. So all I do, and it's not going to take much because underneath there, it's only the soil that's on the surface here that's a little bit dry. Underneath here, there's plenty of moisture in that soil because our soil has so much biomass in it. But I'm just going to go ahead and drip a little bit of water here. Not much, because it doesn't need much. That's it. That's all I'm going to do there. Now for the rest of the tray, I'm going to actually turn it around. I think it's going to be a little bit easier to do this if I turn it around. So one of the things I've done is I've made a little plastic piece, and if you can see that, I've cut it so that it's got radius to the edge here. And that's just so when I'm putting it in here to separate the plants, I'm not damaging the plants. Now the thing about microgreens, you don't want to spray them with a spray bottle unless you're in a super dry area. You'll create mold and mildew on your greens because this canopy is so tight that it can't air out very well. And so unless you're just in a really super dry environment, I mean, I've gotten away with it in the past with a really fine mister, but it's not recommended. All I do to water is, when I need to water, is I just take a bottle, and I like to just put my finger over the end of the bottle so that it just drips. But I use my little tool here to move the greens aside so I'm not getting any drips on top of the microgreens. Now I'm going to get some on a few, but it's relative, right? It's not a lot. I'll part the greens, and then I'll just pour right on my little piece of plastic here, just some drips, and that'll get that water down in there. Now again, this system has got plenty of moisture in it. It doesn't really need to be watered. I'll check it again in a couple of days. But if the greens aren't wilting, if you can touch the soil and it feels damp, there's plenty of moisture in there. And typically there's plenty of moisture in the system from the first watering for at least the first week. And this tray has been going 8 days. I have spot watered it a few days ago, and it is holding plenty of moisture. And so you're just going to have to judge that and get a little experience as you go. But as long as your greens are looking nice and green and healthy like these are, I mean, these are looking great. So just pay attention to your greens, keep them in indirect light, and if it's not super dry, if it's not winter where you're running the heater all the time, you're going to be fine. You're not going to need to use much water at all. And if you do, just try to keep the water off the greens, and better to be sparing and add a little bit more as you go than to water too much, because if you water too much, you can end up getting mold problems. And right here, when I initially harvested at 6 days, there's a little tiny bit of mold in there, and it's starting to clear up because it can air out. But there was a little bit of tiny little bit of mold right in that area, and so I harvested that first so that it didn't spread. Anyway, I hope you have great luck with your greens. Please call me or message me if you have any questions. Happy to answer them, and have fun farming. Thanks a lot.